Hey guys, it's vf.miniatures Warhammer Tactics series, and today we're going to talk about top 3 shield hosts for Adeptus Custodes, which I recommend and how I think you should use them. First things first, what shield hosts are? For some of you who are not very experienced with Adeptus Custodes, they are basically your chapter tactics. So an army-wide rule, in this case set of 2 army-wide rules that are applicable to all your units, all of them. In addition to the rule buff itself, we also gain access to one unique relic, world trait, and stratagem. In total, we have shield hosts to choose from. We don't have any custom ones where you can pick and choose buffs however you like, which we have with Space Marines and Votan, but we don't have with Custodes. And the rule, the shield host, is going to shape your roster and how you play the game massively. And first host that we're going to talk about are the Emperors Chosen. They're the first one in the book, the main one, I guess, because they're like an amalgamation of all other ones, and are actually very, very good. If I was just starting out with Custodes, you didn't know what to choose and what to go for, I would probably recommend for beginners to start with them, just because of how versatile they are, and you don't have to think much when you are choosing them. They will just enhance everything you've got, and here's how. You'll get 1 reroll to hit all wounds in each of your shooting and fight phase activations, which is massively powerful for something like Custodes, where most of your units are MSU, so very small, and each unit gets their own reroll every turn, every phase. By every phase, of course, I mean fight phase and shooting phase. Say we have a unit of 3 Virtus Praetors. We have 3 melter shots that we really want to go to the target and actually come to the saving throw step. And they are AP force, so some things will just have no save against them. And that's very good, but we need to hit first, and our bikers are often way up there on the board and don't have the support from Valoris or just any captain. And it's likely that out of 3 shots, you may roll a single one, which is problematic. And then with this reroll, you can just simply reroll that one and be good to go. Yes, of course, you have after that the wound roll, but it's possible also that you have hit all 3 times. But when you have been wounding, one of the wound rolls have failed, and then you will be able to reroll that. So it gives you a very good level of flexibility and a lot of reliability. The things that should be, in my humble opinion, with Custodes anyway. Considering that the entire army hits on 2s in combat and in shooting and has relatively high strength characteristic all rounds on both melee and shooting weapons, the reroll like that is going to bump up the efficiency and reliability massively. Second ability is a 4+ shrug against mortal wounds. We all have, all Custodes hosts have 6+ feel no pain against mortals, but obviously ignoring half of the wounds instead of ignoring 18% is very, very different. And of course, Custodes, they have big problems against psychic heavy armies because we don't have a lot of denies, and we really want our guys to survive as long as possible, and our ability to shrug some of that stuff is very necessary. Choosing a guy who costs 50 points with 2+ save, 4+ invulnerable save, toughness 5, transhuman, and all that stuff that you can also open up and activate in them, and losing that to just a single smite is no fun at all. Their stratagem is also very powerful, and it costs 1 command point that allows you to select one of the other shield host styles, which is basically their 2 buffs that they get, and turn that on for the entire battle round for one of your units. It allows you to have best of all worlds in this case, and if you really know what you want, like for example, you want that particular unit to have the Shadowkeepers traits, which we're going to take a look at next, and you don't really care about all other stuff, and you have that command point, then by all means that's a very good use for it, because you're going to get their buff in the situation where you think you need it. Their world trait is a good one. I can't say that I would recommend to spend a command point on it. You get an extra attack in melee for each model you kill, up to 4. So I'm not sure. It's a neat thing to have, but there are a lot of great traits out there for Custodes, like even 5-up shrug for superior creation. Even that is more important in my opinion than extra attacks in such a manner. If it was something like reroll all failed wounds and 6s to undo mortal wounds in addition to the normal damage, I would say, yeah, maybe if you want to create a super fighty captain, then by all means. But this trait is only going to be useful if you're fighting against a horde, or in the best case scenario, something like intercessors. And what, you're gonna kill 1 or 2 more intercessors for that trait? It's good. It's not useless, but I'm not sure it's worth an extra command point. And the relic is a mass spear, so it's a spear that is nothing to write home about. I don't even think we need to talk about it. The Custodes relics, weapon relics, have been underwhelming ever since 8th edition. I don't know why, even though it makes no sense that Custodes should have the best war gear in all Imperium, but for some reason they don't have a single damage 3 weapon relic in the book, apart from the one that's only locked to the Dread Host. Again, I don't understand that. It would not break the game if one shield captain could carry a Uber sword with damage 3. It doesn't break the game with Black Templars. It would not break a game with Adeptus Custodes. But anyway, that's what we have to deal with for now. And another thing I forgot to mention is that each shield host has their favorite kata, and kata is like an army-wide rule that most of the infantry characters have, and bikers I think as well. So yes, you can use that rule at the beginning of each command phase. I think you select one, you select them pre-game, and then you activate them. And basically what a favorite one allows you to do is you can activate it twice instead of once. And that's very good because some of them are extremely powerful, and surprisingly, those 3 that we are going to talk about have the best ones, in my opinion. Rendex being one that's very good against vehicles and monsters. That's the favorite one of the Emperors Chosen, so you can have that for 2 battle rounds for Emperors Chosen. The first stance you have and you can use for that kata is the unmodified hit rolls of 6. They automatically wound the target. Very good for something like a whole bunch of bolter shots, strength 4, strength 5. That's very good, especially considering that they are damage 2 most of the time. And the second stance, which is also your option, is that you can have +1 strength on the charge against vehicles and monsters. And again, that's very important for your spears, which are strength 7, so they would go up to strength 8, wounding toughness 7 targets on 3s, toughness 8 on 4s, and so on and so forth. What favorite kata allows you to do is not only select the same one in the next battle round, but also in the first battle round when you have selected it, you can use both of the stances because you sort of don't count as using them. Katas are very weird. I understand that, guys. It's probably very confusing how that all sounds, but believe me, it's very good, and Rendex stance is a good one. So all you need to do is just read through the book again, and then you will understand that it's basically like Doctrines, but slightly better, probably. Now, the Shadowkeepers, the boys in black. I really like Black Armored Legions and Space Marine chapters. I played Deathwatch, and I like the fact that they are an amalgamation of a lot of other chapters, and Shadowkeepers as well. I like their lore a lot, and they are the protectors of the keeps under the Emperor's Palace. They keep all the nasty stuff that's hidden in those vaults from coming out and playing with everyone in a nasty and violent way. So they are protecting the citizens of the Imperium and Terra, in this case, from all that terrible stuff. That makes them very, very good on the defense, and that's represented in their rules. So what buffs do we get for them? We get -1 attack to all the enemy, for only enemy units that are fighting the Shadowkeepers in combat. That's very strong. Just imagine, for example, you're charging a unit of 3 Shadowkeeper guys with your Terminators with Thunderhammers. And you have 16 attacks for your squad of 5 because of the Sergeant. And you will have to subtract 5 attacks from that immediately just for fighting Shadowkeepers. After that, you need to hit, you need to wound, you need to go through their invulnerable save, and all these things are difficult. But you have already lost 5 attacks just for daring to fight them. And that's very, very strong, especially against good, high-quality attacks that are numbered in, say, 10 or 20. That's like their perfect clientele. And their favorite stance is Captaris, which is a very, very good one. It's probably my favorite one, and it allows you to do 2 things. First stance allows you to say that your opponent cannot use any hit roll rerolls in combat against you. That's just devastating. You already have the stratagem that allows you to say that your opponent cannot reroll anything against one of your units, and also you can protect your guys with just no hit roll rerolls in combat at all for the single battle round, or 2 in this case, for Captaris being the favorite stance of Shadowkeepers. And the other ability is less exciting. I would probably not use it much, but still it's good to have. It's each time an enemy unit, excluding vehicle and monster, is within engagement range and tries to fall back, you have to roll off, adding 1 to your opponent's roll if they have fly keyword, and if the enemy doesn't win, if they lose the roll-off, then they cannot fall back. That's good. Situationally, that can be incredible, but in most cases, that's just probably going to be a gimmick thing, and ignoring all the hit roll rerolls is probably more important. And the second ability that Shadowkeepers have is rerolling all wound rolls against characters. That's very situational, so sometimes when your opponent's army doesn't have a lot of characters, then you're not going to benefit much from that second ability until the 3rd or 4th turn. But against some forces where there are characters with more than 9 wounds, and they can be targeted, so you can try to fire at them and charge them from turn 1. That can be a big buff for you, allowing you to reroll all the wound rolls for your bolter weaponry, which is again damage 2 mostly, and your attacks in combat, and your bolters, and all that stuff. And that works, as you probably understand already, for both shooting and melee. Their stratagem is no less wonderful. For 1 command point, any of your non-vehicle squads, so bikers as well, can get -1 strength for any incoming attacks, be it combat or shooting. It's almost as good as -1 to wound. There are some cases where it would do nothing for you, so you wouldn't use it. But in a lot of cases, that can mean a difference between wounding you on 5s or wounding you on 6s, and that's a very big swing. And the thing I love about the stratagem the most is that it only costs 1 command point, no matter how big your squad is. So even if you have 10 guys in the squad, it's still gonna cost 1 CP, which is awesome compared to something like Transhuman Physiology or the Arcane Genetic Alchemy, as it's called in Custodes Codex, or the Emperor's Auspice. Both of these will cost you 2 CP, where this one is only 1. The relic is also very powerful, one and only Fight Last debuff in the Custodes book. There are no others available, and therefore it's very, very desirable. We really want to control the fight phase. We already have so many things going for us in the fight, and allowing you to just make someone not fight until the end of the fight phase is just incredible. I cannot imagine how nightmarish it might be to fight Shadowkeepers, because you're not rerolling anything. You have already being forced to subtract 1 from your attacks characteristic. It's very possible that you also need to subtract 1 from your hit rolls if you're fighting against shield guys, and after that you are not fighting at all until the end of the fight phase. And these Custodes also have 1 command point interrupt if they're on objective. So just there is so much going on, so that you are in big trouble. Their Warlord trait is an okay one. It's kind of neat, allowing your character to ignore invulnerable saves on other characters, and it works both in melee and shooting. It's cool on something like a bike captain who can fly over the heads of your opponent's opponent's infantry, stand close to a character, or shoot a melta missile into them and kill them potentially even with no invulnerable save in AP4, and then charge something else. That's interesting. You can go for that combo. I've talked about it in my top 3 combos for Custodes. You can check out this video if you like. And yeah, it's nice. And if your opponent does have a lot of characters or you don't really care about them, then it's not really cool. So nice to have. Maybe if you're running a bike captain, consider taking it. And next are the Emissaries Imperatus, the white and gold guys. So they start out strong with 2 key buffs which almost rival the sheer power of the Shadowkeepers. They have fight first, which is kind of a different twist on the fight phase domination that Shadowkeepers have, and also they ignore all hit and wound roll modifiers. That's very powerful. Their favorite stance is Conservi, which is probably not as powerful as Rendex and the Captaris. It allows you to perform an action after falling back or advancing, which is good for the first turn. Usually in the first turn you would choose Callistus for the additional d6 on your advances to just get you up the board. But if you are playing with banners, which is something you might want to do with Custodes sometimes because we don't have the best secondaries, to be honest, so banners might be a good choice. And if you want to get to that objective, sometimes you need to advance, and the Conservi allows you to advance and still be able to perform an action. Or also what it allows you to do in the second stance is you can shoot and perform an action in the same turn. Ignoring all modifiers is a big buff because almost every faction in the game has at least some way to modify your hit roll. That will not help you against something like Illusory Supplication from the Dark Apostle in the Chaos Space Marine book, because that's trans hit instead of just -1 to hit, and so not really helpful there. But against something like Harlequins, which have modifiers both in shooting and in combat, so, and a lot of other factions, that's very big. -1 to wound is a rarity. You almost never see that. It's like something that Bellicor has and maybe a couple of other guys in the game, but other than that, not really prevalent. Dense cover as well, so you will be shooting through the trees like there are no trees, and your opponent will have to subtract 1 from that dense anyway. You probably are running Vexel Praetor at that point, and you already have that dense cover, but some of your units may be away from the banner, and that would really help. That's also awesome on the Sagittarium Custodians that can double shoot their bolters. So they have 2 profiles, and if you shoot both, you must subtract 1 from the hit roll. But in this case, you would subtract it and then ignore it simply. Another strong reason to run them or to play them is 2-3 command point stratagem into the darkness. It would cost you 2 command points for a unit of 1 to 3 models, and 3 command points for anything more than that. And it allows you to pre-game move a core unit. Very scary in the units of 5 Virtus Praetors, for example, because they would be able to move 14 inches, and then after that you can move 14 inches again at the start of your turn 1 and charge potentially. So a lot of movement, which would be very hard to hide from. Yes, of course, you're exposing them, and obviously you can lose that roll for the first turn, and then your bikers are out there and far away from any protection. That's why you would probably want to hide them behind terrain anyway, because they're fly, so they ignore that and don't care. But hiding them is a good way to protect them if you actually lose the roll for who goes first. And that's a very good alpha strike potential for you, allowing your other models, other units to advance up the board in relative safety, because your opponent has to fight off those 5 bikers. Yes, you will lose them most definitely, but at least they will buy you some time. Their Warlord trait is a good type of nice to have traits, adding 3 inches to your aura abilities and giving +1 leadership to units within 9. +1 leadership on leadership allowing Custodes is probably the most useless thing you can imagine, but it also gives +1 leadership to the sisters, which is neat, I guess. But the more important part is that allows you, for your Vexel Praetor, for example, if you give that Warlord trait to him, to project his Vexel's ability onto units that are 9 inches away instead of 6. That's very, very good, because sometimes it's very hard to keep all your units within that protective aura. Their relic is a good one, but I'd probably save the command point because it's a 3-inch aura of ignoring any modifiers to move, advance, and charge, which is, yes, it's good, but again, how often do you really need that with Custodes? I'm not 100% sure that it's worth it. And also at the start of the fight phase, you do 1 mortal wound on 3+ to all enemy units within 3 inches, or D3 mortal wounds if your leadership 7 or less. Relic is the thing I would really think carefully about. How often do you have a problem with charging through a crater, or with someone throwing a tanglefoot grenade at your feet? Some other Custodes player. Is that really a problem for you? Because Custodes really want their command points, especially now when you can use the Emperor's Auspice stratagem more than once per game. You really want to have that that command point to use that stratagem as much as possible, because it's just that good. So think carefully about relics and how you spend your command points pre-game. These are my top 3 shield hosts. As I already said, my favorite one are the Shadowkeepers. I just like how they look, but I'm really interested in what you guys think. If you believe that there is a better one, perhaps maybe you like Dread Host more than all these 3, or if you disagree with something else, please leave that in the comment section below. I love a good discussion about Warhammer, and I'll see you next time.